mouse focus. There we go. Yeah, I'm not even sure that this is what I wanted to start with today.
That's all right. Just do this, hit done. There we go.
What I do is copy over the topics we've outlined for today.
It's not a bad idea.
What are the topics we've outlined for today?
Flipping bears, man.
Yep, got a bear story. Got some gardening, more gardening talk. I'm always a fan of gardening talk.
Indeed.
We've got the next steps and prioritization time for Cruft. I assume we love it. We need more of it. Review Steam performance so far. Topic on at least two people's minds.
Yeah.
Deeps. You throw Deeps up on the agenda, and I look forward to talking about it. I'm surprised that we're talking about it today.
It's been a bit.
It has been a bit, and looking at my calendar, it might be another bit, but maybe that's what you want to talk about.
Yeah.
And then
I'll surprise you.
Oh, I think what I wanted to start with was maybe boring. The bug resolution from the last stream. We ended on another cliffhanger bug investigation.
No, let's go right into that, and then we can talk about weekend stuff and things like that. Maybe we should let's start with the weekend.
Yeah, let's not jump straight into hardcore bug fixes.
Why didn't you fix that bug over the weekend?
Well, I actually did fix that bug.
You fixed
on
it
Friday
before the weekend.
Yeah, I didn't fix it. Oh, well, so there's two reasons why I wouldn't work on it over the weekend. One is that crosses a boundary for me, and I think for you too, in certain situations, right? Like if like the live game was suffering, like, yeah, okay, it's probably in your best interest to do a little bit of bug fixing on the weekends, but that was a version that we didn't push, right?
We held up on pushing.
Right.
A new
part
Steam
of it was
build.
because we knew I wasn't going to work Friday.
Yep.
I had planned to go camping, and I wasn't going to be in town at all weekend. So pushing a broken game on Thursday would have been a bad call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
and,
we were
and I guess
fine.
I sort of buried the lead there of the other reason why we didn't push it on.
Well, you weren't you weren't going to be in town, but I think it's one hand washes the other. Turns out, we did push a fix for it.
Yeah.
Turns out you did put a fix in. And then I went back and tested it on Friday, but I mean, I think that was Friday morning before you left. You took some time and rocked it out. But the point is, like, we're not going to work frantically.
Yeah.
Because that's bad. We're not going to get
bad. You actually you literally get bad work when you're frantic.
Yep. And so we made the call to just like chill out. We're gonna have an ad in about 2 minutes, also, because we just showed up. But
sure. Well, I can at least get the bear story in before.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm happy with how we handled.
So you were camping anyway. That was a roundabout segue.
Yeah, I did want to spend a second just to be thankful that we like took the sober route on Thursday, being like, you know what, this
no push,
not ready, right? Like this cake goes back in the oven, like that kind of thing. Like
toothpicks got batter on it.
It's a reassuring moment, to be able to pump the brakes. I think that like teams without that kind of discipline suffer. So camping is cool, Badger. It was nice and cool. I'll talk about camping now for the last minute I have. I love camping. Camping is a big part of sort of how I developed my independence as a kid. And so I love it. And what we did is actually we got on the Reserva site early enough to get a cabin. So we didn't have to set up our own tent, but it was really rustic. The cabin had bunk beds and a table, and that was it. And it was not hot. It was really cool the first day because it was kind of rainy, but it didn't actually rain that much So we had a nice overcast day in the mountains. It was like 60 degrees or something, which was
Nice.
so good.
Spot on.
A little bit of rain would have added to the fishing ambience, although the fishing itself was awful. I did experience a personal first, though, in that I got to see a bear. I had returned to the site after making dinner and had left out the garbage bag in the cooler, and just on a about out of happenstance, I decided to go back to the site to get something, and that's when I saw the bear peeking at me, and I had to bang on pots to get him to go away, and then I finished putting away the food. So don't forget to put away your food when you're camping.
Sweet. I'm going to push the magic button because it's going to push it. Well, I can't even. It's just going to tell me ad starting soon. But that'll at least buy us a half hour piece, I hope. I hope.
We've got this little capitalism gremlin on our shoulders. Just like, hey, you want to show them an ad though?
Scooch that up that way. Of course, now it's like ad starting soon, and it's just sitting there contemplating it. How about now, buddy? Almost boop. How about now? I don't know. Can't win. There we go. It just popped off. Put my little models on there. I used white paint for hair.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be able to see that unless I open the stream, am I?
Nah, but it's all good.
I saw you go live last night.
Yeah, it did. It felt good. I had a nap yesterday, which was tight. Always helps. More and more, it's my eyesight that is like just rough at night. Where like I put eye drops in now. Like I now use my newest pair of glasses when I'm painting, so they just sit over. I mean, they're literally sitting right next to the Ad BRB thing, because they do have better magnification on the lower part of them. It's really a matter of just like how well I can see more than how tired I am, though the fatigue is what drains my eyes out. So, but it was good. Like these Proxwalkers are in pretty good shape. They need like an all-over wash and then a little bit of details and then some basing, and I think I'm good. Spoilers, I think I probably know where I'm going to spend some requisition points.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it on Poxwalkers?
I think so. I think I want to have them. I got to keep you on your toes enough.
I'm happy. I'm happy because I need something I can kill.
They're certainly good for that. I think though, like, I would warn you, like, if I go back to that detachment, I think I could probably play it 10 times better than I did the first time.
Hey, you know what? That's just life, isn't it?
It is. I'm definitely going to shuffle around my detachments.
Yeah. Someday, I'll think more about detachments.
You should at least have a look at the Christmas one that's on the books.
Okay.
I don't remember what it does, but I certainly remember like when I read it, I was like, "Oh, that seems neat."
Yeah. I can't even tell you off the top of my head what it is. Yeah, I'm not sure that I could tell you what. I'm not even sure I could tell you what my detachment has always been, because
I'm pretty sure you're
part of the rules now.
Yeah, your detachment is pick a person you really hate at the beginning and then get CP if you kill them in the first, second, or third round. I think you.
See, it's wrapped up with like what the judgment mechanic even is, too.
Oh yeah.
Because that person you pick also gets the judgment tokens.
It does. But I think that's what your detachment is. You get to pre-game grudge someone with 2 tokens, and then they're like an assassination target, and you get it's like 3, 2, or 1 CP if you kill them in the first, second, or third round. I can change my camera away from this. Bottle can. There we go. Little Warhammer snuck into the convo. But yeah, I'm going to add a bunch of boxwalkers to my army. That way I can always pull that trigger, pull some things out, mob the table, go from there. One thing we do have to
figure out when the next time we're gonna do that.
We do have to figure that, and I got to get an AC unit for that barn.
You know, it only started to sink in on like the 5th hour.
Yeah. Yeah. But it needs a little something. Even if it just needs air circulation. Like it gets, I mean, I got no problem you and I both going like smelly no shirt dwarf mode while we're playing Warhammer out in the barn. The chest
hair
hair
guy
out.
who just spent 3 days in the woods.
Yeah. You know, optimally with a shower beforehand. But where were we?
You were about to talk about gardening, I think.
Yeah, gardening. My garden is prolific. It's tiny. It's tiny
Nice.
right now, but prolific. Several bumper crops this year. The fennel,
Sick.
struggling, but the snap peas are just like insane. I had to go out there and like put some posts up and some tie across them so they've just been like dreadlocks hanging off the side of this box.
Nice.
With just beans all over the place.
Overflowing.
Yes, overflowing. I had to do the same with my tomatoes that are they're on like ground boxes. They're just fabric things you just fill up with soil, but it's like each box is like a foot by a foot, and they're four by 2 boxes, and like there's just a row of these things, some of which have multiple tomato plants in the box, and they're just absolutely erupting. Like definitely, I think a couple of them are probably like belly, maybe chest height. I know they're elevated up a foot. It's not that crazy, but really good stuff, and it's really fun with the kids to go out and pick some stuff and then eat it, or pick some stuff and then cook it, and then eat it. It's like that cycle has like for Ruby definitely, for Kira somewhat, has like solidified the like gardens are magic. The thing I'm really curious about,
they are magic.
They are. Is like my potatoes.
Good witch magic.
Yes, good witch magic. I'm very curious about my potatoes and how they're doing, because there's such a like can't really tell.
I was about to say they must be mysterious little buggers, right? Because
They are.
They're just under there, no?
You can tell the health of the plant overall by what grows above ground, but like the yield of potatoes, no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you get prolific enough where if they're in a sealed container, not sealed, but like an edged container, like a box of some sort, the potatoes will grow enough where like it's apparent that it turns into like this mound. But I don't know. I feel like I'm going to dig my hands into one of these things at one point, just sort of like swirl around a bit, see if I can feel what's in there. So it's good. And then a bunch of herbs that we planted late, doing just fine. Still getting buried in radishes, which is
yes.
There's just too many of them. Too many of them. Like too many to like pickle them and get through them consistently. At the end of the season, I'm absolutely
start snacking on them.
Yeah. They're really good for you, except in terms of sustenance. Like you can't live off of them, even
where it counts.
They're full of all the other stuff you need. Like they're actually a decent like source of like vitamin C and stuff like that.
They're like a vitamin supplement, but
yeah,
calories.
Like if you were living subsistence out in the woods and you had radishes, like they'd cover like 90% of the like healthy other vitamins and minerals you need if you were just like living on rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbit's kind of a bad example, but
yeah, you need more fat than you can get from a rabbit.
Yeah, or a radish, but they're just not caloric enough.
We have a lot of rabbits, and we could be eating them, but we're not. How about you?
We do. In fact, my wife saw some, I think 1, maybe 2 baby rabbits yesterday. There's a weird spot in our lawn up against our house where our bird feeder is, where I was a little hesitant to go over with the lawnmower because it used to have pallets out there, and I was like, "This is gonna be
There's
some
bunnies in there.
like Watership
That's a
Down
bunny.
moment." But I finally
Yeah.
investigated it enough, and there was nothing burrowed in there, so I mowed over that. Thankfully, it didn't like do the spit blood out the side of the riding mower moment. Um,
I think about Watership Down more often than I care to admit. There are just brazen rabbits all over the place here.
oh my god, it's
These are
yeah.
not Watership Down rabbits. Like these guys have it made.
Yeah, the rabbits we have in our yard are everybody's pretty happy around that bird feeder. That thing spits out a lot of extra seed. Everybody hits that thing, and we've got acorns, and we've got. I mean, I'm not like super rural, but I got enough of a yard with big trees around the edge, um, and it's an older property, so
Yeah.
it's definitely like there are sections where there's just what used to be the stump of a tree and it's now just a hollow and like I know shit's in there. Like just chilling.
Yeah. I've got a chipmunk that absolutely has a burrow like right in the middle of my raised bed. I watched him go into it, so I know where he lives now. But he's not the one that's offending me. It's the damn rabbits.
Yeah, there's a chipmunk house in the retaining wall uh that abuts my driveway. Like right at the end, right all the way at the end of the retaining wall, there's just a little hole in there. And they just creeping.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I love little stories about the rabbits that live around. Like my girls love the Beatrix Potter stories.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the book that drew Addie into the world of chapter books was Miss Frisbee and the Rats of Nim.
Ah,
Do you know that one? Did you ever watch the Don Bluth animation of it?
Secret of Nim.
Yeah, it's a good one. Your
Indeed.
chipmunk house on the corner of the property reminded me of that. All right.
Sequel movie, not so much. Never saw the sequel. Never saw the sequel.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a sequel. Interesting. I feel like that generation of like animation, none of the sequels were done well. Like Land Before Time sequels, like so many of them.
Yeah,
All a pale shadow of the first one.
there came a time when the formula hadn't been cracked yet. And then like eventually it was like, no, there's definitely going to be a sequel. It's definitely going to be like decent enough. But I feel like maybe it took like the sort of Pixar era for that to like start to make sense.
Yeah,
But
someone had to raise the bar
yeah.
for people to like stop eating it up. Maybe I don't know.
So what'd you fix, man?
Oh, yeah, it's this bug. So, what was the bug? The bug was that in a debug build, like a development build, everything looked fine. And then in a release build, all of a sudden, the Realtor and Chivo apps weren't showing up, or they were showing up. They were not respecting any of the logic we had written in the tutorial system
No
to
respect.
hide them. And what I believe is happening is kind of it's adjacent to stuff I was talking about at the end of last stream, where I have, you have all these different components in the game. There's controller classes for this and view classes for the UI component of it, right? Like most things are split that way. There's a bit with like the logic, and then a bit that only cares about what it looks like. Very superficial. And the approved way to communicate between these two is for the logic-y bit, the stuff that's available to anything that needs it, has functions that all these other things can call, and all those functions do in the end is raise an event for the UI to react to. So this keeps things nice and separated. It prevents you from getting into a difficult to change situation. But part of the problem, though, is like we had an event for when the availability of the Realtor app changes. And what was happening is, depending on the order that things came online, it would either see that event fire off or it wouldn't. That was kind of part of it. And so like you have to structure your stuff such that it can cope with being on either side of that, the initialization order. Otherwise, you're in a even more difficult to untangle situation. So you've got to be able to discern the state of the thing you care about during construction of the object and react to changes in that state to the future. Like that's the ideal. But what was actually happening in my view class, the thing that cares about what things looks like, which is the file I have open now, there's no point in reading any of these words, because the fix in this file was to remove the variables I was using to track whether the Realtor app was visible. Remember, this is the view controller. This is the view portion of the class, and it shouldn't have that much logic. The correct place for those tracking variables is actually down in the controller class. So what was happening was I was creating these variables in the view that hold the state of whether these things should be visible. And in debug mode, these, in any code file you come across, you're going to come across a variable that's declared, and then it's going to get a value like we see right here, or maybe, well, I actually don't do it much because of what I'm about to say. These variables get initialized right before calling the constructor for your class. So class constructor is the thing that creates that object. And in debug builds, apparently that happens kind of early. So these objects would have this I would have this variable in its initialized state, and then the tutorial system would come online and it would send out a message, go, hey, it should be false now. Like, so it would change that value and it would be fine. But in the release build, we know that Unity and the C# stuff backing it are much more, they're compiled in a way that's much more optimal, much more performant, a lot faster, and the order that things come online is a little bit different. So those variables that were being initialized right before the constructor of my view class were now getting set after the tutorial had kind of done its logic and told the system that it should not see it. And then the view gets constructed and stops that with what I was initializing the value to.
Right.
Because my logic was, I want the default to be true. I don't want there to be a case where you can't, see the Realtor or the Chivo app unless you're in the tutorial.
So
and
you defied...
that might have been sound logic, but it's not how things work when it comes down to the initialization order of various Unity components in a release build.
You defied your own architectural view model controller paradigm for just a little spot, and then it was like,
source of truth. Yeah, I got a little mixed up there because I had the plumbing was all intact, but I had a state variable where I didn't need one.
Yep.
That I violated the single source of truth principle. That was the mistake that was made there.
Which is
like two sources of truth for it, which is how you get mixed up.
Which is to me like what's neat and validates the architecture, is that you're like, oh, this is like an aberration to be actually doing this here. Oh, pull it out, and like there are times when you do decide on an architecture, you find something that sticks out and you fix it, and it still doesn't fix the problem, and then you're hosed. Like in a case like this, where you're like, you can have more confidence in the fix because it's not just a couple lines of code. It's a couple lines of code that like do something against the rules that you laid out for yourself. Like it allows you to go like, I found it. And a lot of times when you fix something, you're like, did I find it?
Yeah.
This is a little better.
Yeah, and so now the controller class owns these is Realtor enabled and is Chivo app enabled variables. I don't initialize them here because I want to handle them in the constructor. So I know exactly when these variables are getting set. And the other thing is like mono behaviors. This is the like fundamental component type that Unity bases most of its design off of, right? You create little objects in the game and you add components to them to give them behaviors. So Unity projects have a lot of mono behaviors in
Hmm. I mean,
and
mono behavior is basically Unity's wrapper that makes a Unity thing a Unity thing.
yeah, that I mean, back in the day, this was like revolutionary design. My game engine can just have behavior, like my player
Wow.
can have a bunch of different behaviors attached to it, and I don't have to write them all in one thing. Amazing. Um, but there are definitely some trade-offs, and one of them here is like it's not clear when Unity is going to call the constructor of a mono behavior, and that was the
Yeah, it's
that
not
was
your
the
call.
delta here because those fields get initialized right before the constructor is called, and for a mono behavior managed by the Unity runtime, I don't really know when they're going to call the constructor. But you know what I do know? I do know exactly when all of my controller classes are constructed because these are not mono behaviors. These are pure C# things that only own logic. They don't know how to do Unity stuff. They don't know how to um, draw a line or whatever, right? They're not UI. Anyways, that's that.
So Friday morning, I got a message from Will, and it was like, "Yep, pretty sure I got it. Checked in to fix." And so I just went back in Friday, like asked him exactly, what the STR, the steps to reproduce the bug were. Got clarity on that. Went in,
Yeah,
tested it, and we still got to push a build, which was nice. Getting to push a build into last weekend. Because it turns out we had a good weekend. Like
yeah.
nothing groundbreaking. I don't have my platinum grill yet. I'm not wearing any crazy rings on my fingers. No medallion. Um, but we had a good weekend, and I think in part it was being able to like have an update up is certainly good, and it was a good solid update with a lot of stuff in it. It sort of shows that the game is 100% getting worked on, but also a lot of folks rallied on getting us past 10 reviews, which I mean, unless I'm misreading things, seems like a pretty big deal because it puts you into the territory of it'll show you as a positive review. It doesn't show you, even though we were 100% positive reviews, it doesn't show you as overwhelmingly positive, which is 10 of them, which I think is a good safety catch. But like what it does show is when someone goes to your store page, like it's got reviews and it's not mixed, um, it's not poor, uh,
Yeah.
and then they also end up serving, and this I'm pretty sure about at this point. They end up serving your game um, to more people. I don't think on like the main page, but like the discovery queue, it starts jumping in there. So like we sold, what was the number? We sold 16 copies yesterday, which is like the biggest day we've had since like day one when we
Yep.
told everyone and our aunts and uncles. I still haven't told my aunts and uncles, but we sort of tapped into um, networks, and we
Yeah.
got we
Day
got a
one
lot more
was the
visibility.
wish list email.
Yes.
That was basically worth 17 units, and getting to 10 reviews was worth like 16 units.
Yeah. So one other interesting thing though, is that I'm not sure the email actually mattered all that much, and I'll do some digging into that. But I'm
Okay.
not sure that it did. A lot of people got notifications in Steam in the moment, like the little boop in the corner. Um, but I got to actually check on the email click through rate and all that jazz. I'm not
Mm.
sure it was that crazy.
Well, yeah,
But
I haven't seen how the breakdown for any of that stuff works. So
the difficulty with attribution there though is that someone gets an email notif saying that hey, this thing went on sale. They have Steam open already, and they just type Cruft in. They don't necessarily like on their phone
well, yeah,
or through their browser like need to hit the link. So
right.
I'm not saying the email isn't important. I'm saying it's tough to get attribution for that is like reliable. But it looked like a conspicuously low number to me. But that whole push, that moment of your game going into early access and people seeing it, hugely important. And that day we sold 23 copies, and then the 29th we sold 16. It says here. It's pretty. We're almost at 100 copies. There's a non-zero chance
Yep.
we'll hit 100 copies sold during this stream. Could happen.
Could happen.
Could happen. Which is good. But like the reviews were just like a massive, massive help.
Mhm.
Because I always try to think about my behavior as a player. Not that it determines what other players do, because it doesn't. And not that I'm a normal Steam person, but like the very basic behaviors of how I interact with Steam as a platform is quite often I'm just like looking for something today, and something will get served up to me, and I'll go, oh, it's got no reviews yet. Maybe I'll hold off on this. Like maybe I'll hit the wish list button, but maybe I'll just like something else will come up. And so it's like a very scary territory to be in when you don't have that positive right there. I look for it all the time. I think the other thing is through Steam, in a lot of cases, when you just mouse over something in a different list, it shows what its current rating value is, positive or not. There's a lot of extra UIs that gets pulled into, and so its absence is glaring. Like, should I take another click to see this thing? So those reviews helped a bunch. The other thing that we ended up with was, let's see, click through some things here real quick. Will and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. Was Steam and Steam platform traffic breakdown. In terms of impressions where the game was served, this actually shows number of visits, not even impressions. We went from on the 28th, sort of like, 27th, we were averaging about 30 or so here and there visits to the store page. On the 28th, it went up to 210. And then on the 29th, it went up to 4,636, which is a hockey stick.
Yeah. What do you mean by hockey stick for those that might not
it's a
get
good
it
point.
visually?
Hockey stick is like, you always want things to go up and to the right whenever you see a chart.
On charts, yeah.
Yeah, on charts, when things like, if it's good, it's growing. And a hockey stick is when you have a line and then the scale of something changes so much that it goes up and is hockey stick shaped. And that's essentially what we got. And it's probably a variety of different things. Like, it is hard to tell if someone streamed about it maybe, or if some news outlet maybe picked it up. I don't think any of those things happened. I think it was mostly just through discovery.
We did have a streamer.
We did. Actually, update on that. I went back in there and was just rapping with the guy for a while.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really cool dude.
We should probably synthesize that kind of feedback along with the rest.
Yeah, it was neat. The guy played for hours, which is really nice.
That seems to be the review, by the way. I'll go ahead and I'll say what I mean.
That seems to be the review.
Yeah.
I'll continue, but he only had about like 20 people in, but like he was having a good time with it. Super nice. The guy's name is Sprigleaf. Which I can do a thing. Shout out. Yeah, let's do this. Let's see if I did this right. Do I need to put an @ in front of it? I don't think so.
I don't know what you're doing, so maybe.
Yeah, this guy. I put a link into him. And he's just like a very smart, contemplative dude. And then I was like, all right, I gotta go make dinner. I'll be back later. I came back and I came back to play Monster Train 2 because my day's done, and he's got Monster Train 2 up. So I just had him just like over on the other screen, just watching him play while I was getting mauled.
Nice.
Because man, I'm not very strategic in that game either, but it's a heck of a lot of fun. So it was nice. Like, it was really interesting in that, like, our last stream when we when we while we were in it, I was like, oh my god, someone's streaming our game, and then I went and checked it out after we finished. It was cool.
Yeah.
It's a good moment. Like seeing someone else. I'd never contemplated seeing someone else stream a game that me and my buddy were making. Like it was a nice moment. Super cool dude.
Yeah. No, it is a lot of warm and fuzzy feelings to like get good feedback on something that you've been working on. To to see a total stranger interacting with it is just like a weird like voyeur like thing in
Yeah.
general, right?
In I think it's important that it's in the wild because we both experienced like, hey, you do professional playtesting, and that has its own like crazy feels to it, where it's someone who's never touched it before is like trying to interact. I still remember like there was a game I worked on eons ago, and EA was publishing it, so we got to go out to like San Francisco into their like test lab, and it was really crazy because you're sitting behind the mirrored glass thing, whatever. But seeing someone elect to play your game and then stream it, it's like, oof.
Yeah, that is a huge like step deeper, right? Like a step deeper into the whole life, right?
I have a manifesto to read.
I, I see it. I see it. Let's
Yeah,
let's unpack it.
let's dig into this. So Joe says, got to play a bit over the weekend. Biggest thing I felt missing and needed isn't anything systems mechanical, but it's experiential. Sweet. I passed the test. Will I could go into the West? Not yet though. Experiential.
I was going to say, I'm not sure he's putting you on the ship yet.
I know, right? uh, the systems, though. I mean, you gotta understand. Like Joe and I go way back in terms of system stuff. So, like, I'll take that pat on the back. Lack of meta layer ding level up moment. Yeah, that's 100% true. What I would love to see when I pack up and leave and go to a new yard is a screen where the van drives. Stuff falls out the back for the van to hang out a little. Yep. Still be driving in the background, scrolling. You and I talked a bit about like some wrap it up moment that a denouement. I
nope,
personally,
you're talking my undergrad language with denouement.
Denouement.
Falling action.
I feel, I feel like there's some very good opportunities. I think one of the biggest experiential things that we often overlook is just like even things that aren't flashy and big budget, like getting a list of all the stuff you made that counts up would be amazing. Like just a crazy great job, like 1,400 cruft, 6 pigs, 48 fertilizer, like total amount of stuff sold. Even like Stardew Valley gives you like when you send all the stuff off at the end of the day, it gives you a report of like, oh, okay, this is how I did. Like some wrap it up thing that is like, hey, you got these Chivos, congrats. Here's all crap you made. Here's how much money you made.
Yeah, one of the things I kind of loved about the thousand like make a 1,000 cash money achievement was like at the end when you're selling everything off and seeing how much it was. Like that would just be a cool stat.
Yep.
Cool stat to share.
We talked very, very much about like we do an audit at the end of the level. Just like we're doing an audit continuously to see what.
You get audited, but you don't get your tax return.
We're tracking for Chivos all the time. It would be really nice at the end to do some like wrap it up moment of like, here's what the market value of your property is right now.
So we do have a task in here, and it's one word, denouement. But this is what we mean, yeah. And
yeah, it is. It's got subtasks. There's still this AdMech servitor scroll still has more info in here. For the van to hang out in the middle of the screen, still driving with the background still scrolling. Yeah, I think there's an opportunity there. And that's not a bad call in terms of like something we can actually go. Then I get an animated sequence for each Chivo unlocked. Yep. icon flies in, even the icons are better. Its name appears, gets a big check stamped on it. Yeah, this is all gold. And then tells me what I just gained, unlocked, earned from that. And it fades, rinse, repeat for each one. Yeah, we don't. It's one of the biggest mistakes from systems heavy people is we don't celebrate anything enough. It also displayed some stats on the side related to that yard. Yep, hours spent on it. Cruft created, $1. I know, but Bluey wins. That is very true. Things purchased. That'd be dope. Entirely secondary. You have fanfare around hitting a new level on a map. Move to Chivos being unlocked. Yep, it does. Chivos need more fanfare. Larger user experience loop isn't getting closed. Yep. Acknowledgement, celebration, meta progression is missing. Yep.
Yeah.
And you're going to start over in a new place with a small amount of stuff. Before that, give me an attaboy for all the cool shit I just did.
Yep. Yeah. I think we're both like 100% in agreement on that one.
You should make games for a living, Joe. That is very good criticism. And it's true. In a lot of cases, you do find as you're developing something, like if I were an artist or a UX person, or probably even to some extent like a product producer first, those things would probably come long before having a list of, I don't know how many Chivos we have, but it's got to be like 15 or something like that in there today. Those kinds of thoughts would come first. And when you're like a grimy, graybeard systems nerd, you sort of need a bonk on the head to be like, why don't you celebrate all the stuff the player did? Because those celebration moments are huge, like super impactful. And I think the important quote here is like closing the loop on that experience of like right now it's like when you leave you're like, here's the Chivos you got. It tells you what you're gonna get. And then up till very recently, like you never saw that again. It was like obliterated.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there's definitely
we didn't even have the completed stuff anywhere in there.
Denouement.
I feel like we're getting there. Yeah. So all right. Since sort of like our next stop is a bit of a prio session, where do you want to put denouement generally on the list we have?
That's a good question. Let me find. Yeah, that is. I mean, I think we need to design it.
Yep.
And then from that, cost it, put it in. But I don't think it lingers low.
When do we want to design it?
I think I normally wouldn't say like this, but I am so chomping at the bit to get tooltips rocking.
And I think they'll actually help this screen.
I think they will
convey info.
Yeah,
because that's what they do.
So I think that they're going to come after tooltips. That'll give us a little bit of time to design. Yeah, I think that's a good spot for them. Like this is super important. Hits in the feels.
Yep.
But we got a
wild guess estimates at this stage.
Yeah, well, the other thing is that I don't think, I say this about almost every system that's going to come online, is that like I don't think it needs to do everything in its first pass. Yeah, and I think it's best to get, like, it's such a glaring absence that getting a foothold in it and being like, all right, like what can we get in this week, and it's like, all right, you know, in between levels, van goes by, or it's just boogieing in the middle of the screen with the trees going by. We pop a screen that just says like, you know, it's just a list of Chivos, and like, you know, the realtor's happy because your yard was worth X, or like, pick one thing. Like, here's how much total cruft you generated, um, and that's cool. But like, we're updating pretty much like weekly, unless we have a problem. Like, get that foothold in there, and like the next week, be like, all right, here's another task to make this cooler. Like, you know, the Chivos aren't just a list up there. It's like, show them in order, show what you got, put some fanfare on each one. And so I think we just break the task out in such a way where that screen gets better and better, and we're good. I will do some wireframing on that
Okay.
tomorrow.
Cool.
Um,
Yeah, getting a general sense of how we want it to work. The bulk of the work is not really going to be like showing me how much cruft I got. It's more like control flow stuff, like icon appears, check mark superimposed on it, user input, wait for user input to advance to the next thing in the queue. Like that kind of structuring
yep.
will serve us for a long time once I do it. So like upfront, we're still looking at like, you know, we're building another chunk of UI in the game, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which generally takes me a couple days. That's what I mean by 8 to 16. Maybe I'll call it 5 to 10 because nobody actually works an 8-hour day. There's meeting time and thinking time and all that. Anyways, cool.
Dig it.
Yeah, I like it's just been great getting feedback, and I think, you know, yeah, like we pressed the button with like 400-ish wish lists, and we didn't do that to make, you know, the like $200 that we we might be making, right? Like it's to get the feedback that
Mm-hmm.
we're getting from Joe, from Yap, from
All kinds of
Business
folks
Goose, from Badger, from literally everybody who's like, you know, on this on this bus with us, on this
riding
van with
shotgun.
us. Yeah, so it's a huge deal. And I was joking earlier about what the review seems to be. So many people have said to me some stuff along the lines of like, oh yeah, I played the tutorial and then I started trying to make some pizzas and then I looked up and it was 2 a.m.
Yep.
and 2 hours have gone by. I mean,
Which
that
is
definitely still feels like we're on the right path, you know.
yeah, I I think my absolute barometer for like, because it's a hard question to answer. Like, you know, is a game good is like too broad, but like, are you going in the right direction? Is if someone is so engaged that they lose track of time, you're generally in a pretty good spot.
Yeah,
Um,
that is the textbook definition of flow.
yeah, like, and it it's literally like the first step. Like, should I release this game? Is basically quite often, exception of a few games that are supposed to defy that. Like, that's the question that you're trying to answer when you're like prototyping stuff and just getting the thing up and running. It's like, is this compelling? And it doesn't mean the game's going to be successful just because it's compelling, but until you have that feeling like there's something compelling in it, there's not really a reason to like try to blow it up and go nuts with it. It's like to me, it's like the first gate. Uh, you know, is my first experience something where even if I get up and walk away, like, am I thinking about what I'm going to do next in this game, or am I thinking about the next time I'm going to play it? You know, I was bringing up Monster Train 2, and you know, when I went downstairs to make dinner, like I left this guy Sprigleaf, you know, a lurk, and I was like, yeah, when I get back upstairs, I'm gonna go play Monster Train 2 because I hadn't played it today yet, and I was excited for it, and like that's a good sign, and I feel like the very first indicator of that is like, does someone spend more time playing the game than they thought they were gonna?
Yeah.
So we got that. Now we just have to sort of make good on all the rest of it.
Yep. Yeah, we gotta make the great stuff that people are asking for happen.
We do.
So,
That's the point.
speaking of making stuff happen, next is tooltips.
Yeah.
It's not the feature that you call the press about, but it's definitely an important vehicle. I've done a little bit of planning just on how I'm going to try and set this up. This is going to look like more goofy spaghetti from Will.
Sweet.
But this diagram is actually just pretty simple.
I like goofy spaghetti.
This was not that bad. I could make better spaghetti. Again, this is just like
Zoom in more, please.
this is just more of the model view controller kind of stuff. We already have an info controller class, so I'll add 2 functions to it for showing and hiding the tooltip. It'll raise an event that other things can subscribe to. The main subscriber to the show or hide tooltip event is going to be something called the info view. I have to add this. I don't know all it does yet, but I don't need to. I know that it needs to maintain the actual UI element that will be the tooltip instance. We'll only need one of them. I'll just reuse it and move it around instead of create and destroy them. And I'll need a little bit of like fancy math to decide where to draw the tooltip. I imagine if I right click something, or if I not right click, if I trigger a tooltip on the edge of the screen, I don't want the tooltip to flow off the screen. I want it to flow towards the center of the screen based on where you are. And there's probably some nuance to that I could use some help thinking about. And then it just needs to hide the tooltip when we're done with it. On this side, I'm kind of going back and forth on whether I want like an interface for things that can trigger tooltips, so I can go back and just say, oh, okay, now this little menu item implements this interface that detects when you are hovering over it and when you stop hovering over it.
Or
the other in the alternative to the contractual approach of this object affords this ability to other things is the base class approach, where I can just take everything, I implement it once, and I take everything that might want to show a tooltip and make it a base class of this with just a little bit of config or whatever. Honestly, that sounds more appealing.
Refresh my memory, but isn't the word interface the thing you've tried several times and ended up finding reasons you didn't like it? Or is that I interface something or other?
Yeah. Well, yeah. All of them, all of the interfaces end up getting this. This naming convention, they do begin with I. The like computer science recommendation is, interfaces are for stuff that has a rather than is a. Is for base classes.
Am I remembering correctly though that we had some stuff that was an interface and then we blew it up?
I don't remember.
All right.
I don't remember what that might be.
I'm not saying interface is bad.
Another thing that might kind of inform how I get this done is the mouse interaction stuff. We're still sort of leaning in on the like old input system that doesn't differentiate, like mouse is a different thing than touch. So I don't think this will be too much, but there might be some details about how I actually need to get mouse input for any object that wants to opt into the system. That might be a little bit of a tricky thing. What if it already does stuff with mouse over and mouse exit handlers? So that's another thing I want to think about.
Dope. I'm gonna hit the ad break button and use the bathroom.
Sweet. Me too. And then I'm going to read Joe's note about tooltips because it's probably instructional.
All right. See you in a few.
Yep.
getting warm in here. Haven't solved for the cool air staying on the other side of the curtain. I'm gonna do it. Do it.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Dread Zed, do you know Dread Zed?
I do.
They just joined the server.
Wonderful.
Sweet. There's like
Get some
a lot of people now.
pals up in here.
It is. All right, I think we are back in business.
Out of the ad zone.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So what's Joe's got for tooltips? That makes it nice when you have tooltips that aren't dynamic, since you can just plug the stuff into the inspector for that component and don't have to spin up other stuff because you haven't entwined it into the panel or view stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure what exactly the context anchoring this statement is now that we waited for an entire ad break to go by reading it. But yeah, like if I'm making a reusable component that I just bolt onto everything and it's all self-contained, like that would work. So much of Cruft is instantiated in code though, and it's not like I can just add the component. It's not like I could just ask you to add the component to the things you want it for. It's mostly going to be what items. What are the bulk of the actual tooltip use cases going to be?
I think in a lot of cases it'll be informational stuff. So I could imagine that anything that shows up in that info box that is like, hey, here's a description of this item. I can imagine you get that just by being moused over, maybe by being moused over for a second. But there's a lot of like internal UI elements, like the rewards for Achivo, like have additional information we don't want to put in that list. So I could see like left clicking any item in your yard might just bring up the informational tooltip. Whereas right clicking on a station might actually bring up the crafting UI, the recipe list right then and there. So you don't always have to be swinging all over the place for it.
Just trying to brainstorm things that might benefit from tooltips beyond what we have. So like location item descriptions, I click on the item in my yard. Menu item descriptions, I click on I'm saying click, but I mean whatever we decide is the tooltip trigger. Menu item descriptions are just items in menus, of which there are many, both in the phone and in the station side of it. We've got all the different components of the Chivo
I could see going to market and going to the dump being potentially maybe. I mean, the thing is, if the little info panel is gone, if the crafting
I'm
stuff,
starting to feel that way too. Like we used to talk about maybe having both, but I don't think we do.
So if my point here though is that like we're losing everything potentially from that left-hand UI except for the go to dump, go to market buttons.
Yep. Like
those things will still exist. They'll just be based on context. And we'll cycle back to what Joe said because there's a block you didn't read ahead of it. Like maybe we end up freeing up the left side of the screen, and the dump and market buttons actually push like globally up to the top left of the screen.
They kind of need a new home if the left side isn't so persistent. There's also, this is like probably getting ahead of ourselves at this point, but at some point we might go back and say like, man, fly out UI that flies out from the mouse is really useful, and we wish that stations did that. In fact, we might have exact feedback that somebody wishes stations did that.
I did mention that while you were making the list.
Yeah.
Like, I genuinely think that you should right-click a station and it's...
I think I misinterpreted what you meant there.
I mean, bringing up the actual crafting UI on site.
That is an interesting little wrinkle.
And it shouldn't.
It's not that bad.
It shouldn't require that much tutorial rewrite. I did actually look through the text. Like, there are a couple of spots that might need to get cleaned up a little bit, but like, right click to open, like, the interactions were not changing. It's just where the thing pops up.
Yeah, cool. All right, let me get back into what Joe was saying. Tooltips being their own component on something that my other things can find and set things on that neighbor component. They themselves don't become tooltip things. Yeah. I think it depends on how, yeah, I think it's going to depend on how I end up actually affecting the box of UI imagery that appears. If being a component on a game object is ideal, then that's one thing. And if we want the UI, like the UI stratosphere to be governing it, then it probably needs to be a different way. Because the trick, one of the tricks I've been encountering in like getting the game's visuals up and getting the UI all working is that like UI and game stuff like just don't talk to each other nicely. They're in totally different worlds, which is maddening sometimes, especially if you want to be a little more there's a fancy word for it, diegetic. What if you want your UI to be kind of in the world, like then
if
you have
want to be
solve some of your problems.
A baller.
Yeah. You want to do sophisticated stuff. I don't know.
All right, so potentially, and this is something we do have to think about a bit. Like, potentially, we're in a mode where, like, if we're going to release every week, there may be some tasks that like require you hold off on some component of it, especially as we start getting into like midday Wednesday.
Yeah, well, it's more critical to be branching when I'm doing work that's going to take a longer time to land.
Yeah. But that said, like, you know, it is like 100% agree with that. At the same time, like, you know, we just got to be mindful of the clock. Like, it might make sense to check in and get testing on something like, hey, it's just the info panel's now no longer permanent. It's now transient. Like, oh, okay. Like, that feels pretty good so far. Like, that might make sense. You might just knock the whole thing out. It's just,
yeah, we'll see where we get. It's definitely the kind of thing where, like, you know, we try to apply this discipline throughout the whole planning process of like finding those layers that we can deliver in. Like we didn't do a full denouement. We did a copy of the main menu with the van driving in front of pine trees.
mm-hmm.
As our first version of
our foothold. I have to tell you though, the moment I saw that, I was like, you know, speaking of you know, systems people rarely celebrating anything, like, there's a super huge feel-good moment. I didn't make the transition into going, maybe we should do more of that, and nor can you do everything just now because it's a good idea. But
yeah,
that alone was a quantum leap forward in any recognition of the player being someone who wants to feel happiness.
And Joe's right not to give me bonus points for that. But anyways,
I give you bonus points. Can you imagine if it literally was just if there was no transition? That is like brutalist architecture.
it's still a little brutalist, but yeah.
Early 1980s supermarket from some Eastern Bloc country brutalist stuff.
Oh. I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into like the behavior of the tooltips itself.
Mm-hmm.
Pretend this box is my game screen,
mm-hmm.
and I trigger a tooltip
mm-hmm.
at any given point inside the game screen. How do we want this to work? For example, I could do a very simple, which quadrant am I in? Kind of question. And the quadrant I'm in determines which direction the tooltip flies out, right?
I think another way to go is that it just flies out towards center.
That's kind of what I mean. That is what I'm talking about. So if I right click in this lower left, if I right click in here, oh no, why aren't you letting me annotate? Oh, because that's the stream. Oh my god.
What I'm saying is that
if I click in here, right, like I get the tooltip flying out up and to the right. If I click in here, I get the tooltip flying out down and to the left.
Right. What I'm saying that basing it off center rather than doing quadrants is more malleable, and I think handles what happens when you are crossover quadrant.
It illustrates something I want to point out, though, is that now the positioning of the tooltip is going to occur one of four ways, relatively evenly distributed. We could favor one particular setup by kind of squashing it. Because really all that bothers us is that the tooltip flows outside of the screen, right? And so
I'm not willing to concede that whole yet, that that's the only thing.
Part of me is trying to think about like what's going to feel predictable and consistent to people. And if it flows towards the center, that is a type of consistency.
But I do see your point. It is very algorithmic. It's very soft. It doesn't actually ever do the same thing twice.
I'm trying to think about like what most programs do. Like I don't think most programs do that. Like this, I'm even able to just test it here in Miro. They only fly to the left once they're past that point where it would fall off. See?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even sure that can be seen on the stream, but
yeah. And obviously, like it does warrant some actual testing in there. I'm sure that the cat's been only skinned like a couple of ways, but we do have the advantage of the right side of the screen pretty much being taken up by the phone, and the phone always being docked on the right side. So I could see things consistently going left and up on the phone, and then consistently going right unless it's going to overlap the screen, and away from closest edge, but still always right unless it goes against the edge of the screen. Elsewise, I could see that. I think the value of going towards the center of the screen for the main play space is that it will naturally keep that UI not in the center, because that's not good, but closer to the middle of whatever stuff you're doing. Now that may entirely blow up in my face because now I can't see the stuff that I want to see. Like the only advantage we have right now by having the UI off to the side is that like you generally leave that part of your screen without stuff underneath it. Um, a little bit, I'm guessing, sort of, but like that is from every screenshot I've seen, kind of what the case is. Where like I can always see my yard, but I don't know if you really need to see your yard all that much. But having, in terms of ergonomics, having the at least crafting menu pop up towards the center of the screen seems to me like the least amount of moving around needed to then select stuff from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely for the. It's like this decision is much more impactful for the crafting menu.
Getting down dirty with the ergonomic chronic.
It seems like controlling which direction the tip opens is something we'll want to play with, right? And maybe the first pass is good enough if it just opens towards the middle, like you're saying.
Yeah, and I I think the things, by looking at my weird crystal ball, I think the things we're going to run into are going to be like, this is annoying. Let's just like quickly flip on this. Um, I don't want to, nor do I imagine we're going to come back to this a zillion times. Like I think the difference will be profound enough from a static UI on the left hand side of the screen that most of what we're going to do is be shaving off bad edge cases more so than like long term working on this.
Sure. Anything else you want to say about tutorial tool tips and tools?
I don't think so.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. What the heck else do we have on the docket?
Well, we've covered how Steam's doing. We've talked about reviews. We did a bug postmort, some chit chat,
Talk about deeps.
bit of tooltip design. Yeah, we can talk about deeps. And I have no idea what you're about to bring up, so just lay it on me. What do you want to talk about for deeps?
The main thing is I wanted to talk about it because we've intentionally not talked about it or done anything with it for a while now. For a few weeks in like getting into this early access window, being able to track stuff. But generally speaking, our allocation for deeps has been some amount of chit chat during streams, and then Friday afternoons, Will's got a block of time where he just starts engineering stuff. We're at the point where we have access to an artist. We don't have them full time, but like, okay, person's got an animation background. A lot of what we've been describing is like how to animate and visualize this to get started. And I feel like we have gotten this craft game into early access. We can probably spend a half day a week of your time again, with your permission, like continuing to move this ball forward.
Yeah, and none of my like assessment of deeps or how important it is to spend time on it has changed. We've literally just got to consciously say it's time to get back into it.
Yeah, I mean, I was the one who was like, I think we should
its
shut it
position
off.
on Friday puts it in danger of all sorts of random things chopping it off the end. Like, I think we only intended to skip Deeps for like one Friday, but it ended up being it's going to end up being 4 because it went from ramp up to early access release,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was Warhammer. Oh wait, no, I'm camping. Oh wait, no, 4th of July. I don't think we're working on 4th of July.
I don't think so either. But I guess my point here is like that is where it should be. This obviously it can't stay off the docket forever, but if something should take a back seat, it's the thing that we're only putting, one afternoon a weekend. Now, does that mean we should have
I
plugged
did
it
want to
back into it?
reevaluate whether it should stay on Friday, and it sounds like you're still okay with that. So.
I am, though I think as we knock out, I think what's naturally going to happen is that it's going to stay in this spot until we blow out its place a bit more, and then it's like, hey, you know what? We're going to allocate like 1 day of Z's time and 2 days of Will's time to it because Cruft is far more about content than actually like hardcore dev. I think it'll just naturally sneak its way in, and then it'll find its place. But I think it is right that it is a second-class citizen for a while.
Yep.
Especially given the fact that we haven't even dropped the $100 to put a build on Steam with it yet.
Nope.
But the Friday's a component of it, but we also just didn't let it leak into the meetings because we just had more salient stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
But now, I feel like it's time for it to creep back in. This Friday is the 4th of July, which means Sunday is my kid's birthday.
Nice.
Bunch of Zomidis coming up. 3 of them. One from all the way out in California.
Nice. You got a big party blowing in.
Yeah, my parents and my sister are showing up. I think my sister-in-law might be here too. It'll be subdued. Just hop the kid up on chocolate. Let her go nuts. So, where are we at with Dupes? We had fish floating around.
Yeah. Let's launch it. Let's turn the thing on.
Yeah, let's turn the thing on.
Oops, that's not the thing.
We had depth having an effect on visualization. I think the next big hill to climb is being able to make something that ragdolls, that paper doll animates, even if it's just 2 pieces. Body and a tail.
If I put that in my sights, I can get there quickly in a way that doesn't move us forward.
That's one of the most honest things any human being has ever said. I love it. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at just how remarkable a statement that is.
I'm trying to clearly articulate why I don't think that that's what we want next.
Mm-hmm.
I think we want the pin doll. I think we want the pin doll to be constructed in code. That's the part that has the most unknown to me because their 2D animation system has a lot of examples that I can search up online and follow, and there's a repo with some code in it, and kind of based on my last phase of investigations with this it was a little alarming that I couldn't access many of these things at runtime. We need a runtime system.
That's funny. Joe just got edited for using the term cake smashers. It's a true statement. But yeah, apparently there's innuendo there. I digress. So
that's funny because the little chat sidecar I use, no editing.
Yeah, no, I had to hit allow it
Oh,
for it to
okay.
make its way through. So here's the thing: if we are not using what is in Unity for that, I maintain my case that I think the next thing we need to do is get a paper doll working.
Yeah, maybe I was just focusing on the word ragdoll because that's like the next. We need a rigged model to ragdoll it, and I could rig a model in a way that we can't use for deeps. Is sort of more words to say my initial controversial thing.
Are you saying that we don't want to use Unity's sprite animation bones thing because we don't have access to it? Like, I guess what I'm getting at is that, like, you're like, hey, there's this thing with all these unknowns. Like, that's where I want to go.
Yep, that is true. I'm saying that I don't know how much Unity's existing 2D sprite rigging tech serves us for this design.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there's an outcome here where we go, the tech isn't ready for this design. I don't want to hint that that's a likely outcome, but it's a possible outcome of
When you
some of
say
the stuff that
when
we're
you say
dealing with, right?
the tech, what do you mean?
I mean, the game engine in a I broadly mean Unity.
Yeah. So what I'm getting at is like I'm not concerned with whether or not we decide to use Unity. I think we need to make enough progress in one direction so that we can start answering questions about
Yeah.
how it works. And like even if it turned out that like over the next couple months, like we homebrew our thing and then there's like some weird eureka moment or Unity updates and they're like, guess what? This is what we do now. Like we still might not go back to it, or we make that call as is, but
What
but
would probably happen in that scenario is we would continue to use what we built because what we built serves us better
if it does,
than the big giant generic thing. That happens over and
no,
over.
no, I know. I'm saying it's a wager that you're very confident in. My point is that this game is about tacking appendages onto things and having them float around in a silly way. There's not much reason to investigate anything else.
Yep.
And I also think like it'll be a good spot for you to just like get your hands horribly dirty. What would they call them? The black hands in like Mad Max terms, like the mechanic you always have go with you along for the ride. People that know how to like if you're in deep on this.
I love that we're trying to remember the in lore name of the mechanic that rides with you in the Mad Max apocalypse.
Yeah.
In order to land this analogy. Yeah. No, that's me. Sure.
Yeah.
I think to me this is like a case of like technical being prudent about tech, and sometimes you have a design that's not going to play well with the tech that's easily at your fingertips, and that might change our feelings about things.
Mm-hmm.
Can we make our own system that pins together paper dolls and then ragdolls them? Absolutely.
Yep.
Not worried about that.
Yeah. So I think we should try to make some progress in that direction.
Yeah.
Especially because it also just allows us to like it being so central to the game itself, like we're going to iterate on it like crazy. So getting a first minimal pass in sooner than later just pushes the calendar forward. The good way.
Okay.
Sweet. Happy July 4th.
Yeah. 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 So July 11th.
Deeps returns.
Yeah. Nope. It might be July 18th.
Really? What's on the 11th?
I'll tell you later.
Is that the best date for us to face off again?
No. That might be July
18th.
Yeah, 18th. All right. There might be some late night deeps. That's that might be the answer.
Yeah, it might be. It might be. It needs to be.
There should be something going on.
There should be something going on, and I think it makes sense at the very least to like break down some task work for it so that there are some chunks that can be found, that can be, worked through. But it needs to. It's second fiddle where it belongs. The fact of the matter is, it's not. We got to find ways to make progress on it. It's always going to have to fight for it until some space frees up.
Yeah. Here's the Deeps roadmap. Currently, we're on investigate runtime creation of bones, skins, and sprites. Investigate runtime capability of IK system. This is getting close to the ragdoll stuff you're talking about, though.
Yeah.
Investigate automatically building skeletons at editor time. Yeah, this was, if we can't do it at runtime, maybe we can run some sort of crazy bake process on our data and pre-bake them all, which might still be smart.
I like pre-baking things.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, these still feel like the right things, even if the tasks are maybe not deliverables. That's probably what's wrong with these. This is the right work to be doing, but what is a shareable, reviewable, deliverable version of this?
A ragdolly head and body of some sort.
A pin doll head and body.
Yeah. And I also think like we tend to find out once we actually break the seal on stuff like this, a lot of what you end up doing is just research.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Oh, I didn't think about doing it this way." And then you get, a breakthrough. But a lot of it is just like having the time to sit down, really think about it, plug a couple things in, see how they react, and then you're like, I bet now I remember this game that did this thing. This person says that.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. There's almost certainly like a GDC talk somewhere.
For sure. Oh, I have some errors in here.
Like it may make sense to like find some game that does something similar and be like, do they have a modding channel on their Discord, all that kind of stuff. That might make sense.
Why am I getting errors around input events?
That's a good question.
Distracted by random errors that don't point to my code.
I'm going to step out for 1 second and let you work on deeps.
It's always a little bit of like a tax when you move to a new version, and Unity 6 is a bigger version jump than I'm normally doing. Those seem to be the only actions I was taking earlier. Did I interact with some other program and then come back to find errors? Nope, not it. Oh well.
I see my master plan has worked. It was merely a matter of getting you to open the project, bring on those fond memories. The other issue I've got is one of our smoke detectors in our house is like chirping because the battery's low.
Oh no.
It's driving me mad. Per Joe, there are also so many problems that no matter how long you try to think through everything, you just don't realize you're halfway down the rabbit hole. Oh shit, gotta solve that. Yeah, it is true.
I think that's part of like the challenge of the planning and leading the charge on the engineering side of things, where knowing the right amount of planning to do, because you can't go into it guns blazing with no plan. At least not not if you want to get there in a timely fashion. But also, yeah, you can absolutely plan things to death and get nothing done and make a bunch of plans that are useless, right? Like plans are useless, but planning is essential. That's sort of my perspective on that. Is there stuff you're going to discover along the way that you didn't think of? Absolutely, but it doesn't stop you from trying to plan it out.
I think you're going to try to use the PD controller, and it's not the worst idea ever.
Oh, for
yeah,
like animating the bones.
One dot on this sprite wants to get to this other dot on this other sprite, and all you got to do is figure out the rotational part. You're done.
I think it might look kind of fun too if it's got a little bit of overshoot and oscillation.
A little bit. A little nugget of that.
That could also be part of how we mark up the limbs in data. The limbs could have a springiness to them.
Yep.
That you can change.
Yep. And then this piece is always just trying to get to this other piece, and one of them's the governor. And then all, the
we
main
can even we can even pin the sockets themselves, so it's not just.
Finish your thought.
So it's not just the rotation of the limb, but like whether it's even appears connected. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No. That's how much looseness you'd want on it. It's got a little wobble to it.
Just a little, yeah, just a little bit of drag.
Yep.
Or a lot if you configure it, and if you want to make sure it's always right on point, you just crank up this other number.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then all you got to do is whether or not like this trying to get to this is like a straight computation that doesn't do rotation. All you got to do is get this part going.
Yeah.
The wobbly.
Rotation.
Yep. Like getting
rotation
the point
is funky.
getting the points to line up is one thing, but it has to become like a physics object.
Yeah. Physics. I do not want to use. Physics is another, like, I think physics is a great case of what I was talking about earlier, where like when you use some like big engine solution, some off the shelf, company has made this thing to serve all use cases, bit of tech, it can be extremely hard to get it to do what you want compared to making your own. I mean, like, we don't use the physics engine in Craft, but the objects in Craft are relatively physical, right? Physical in a way that we've decided them to be physical.
And we have like used it. We did replace the few spots that we were using it, but like actually we technically still do use it because there are still a couple Unity particle engines in it. But like
yeah, the particle bounce is probably on their physics engine.
Yeah, but
that
like,
might be the only thing though.
It's not even the bounce. It's just the trees that fly by in the menu screen or particles.
Oh yeah.
But like, if I was doing a top-down shooter, I'd have no problem whatsoever in Unity using their collision for it, and it's like that path is rote. If I was making a shooter, I would have no problem going into Unreal and being like, yeah, this is a first-person shooter or a third-person shooter or whatever, because like that path is very clear. Where big engines tend to then become problematic is if your game doesn't fit a few of those like extremely common known solved problems, then you end up having to like reuse their stuff in weird ways, which is not necessarily bad, but the thing we're trying to do here is not like revolutionary, but almost no one makes games that are intentionally supposed to be like ultra paper doll, 2D ragdolly kind of things. And as soon as you say you're doing that, you know that the specifics that you need to get right probably aren't going to be covered. Probably not. Like even
Yeah.
if our end path is to use Unity's sprite animation system, I'm like 900% confident that we'd have some spots in it, no matter what, that we'd have to be like, and this is where we don't use it, and it's kind of awkward. It's just the way it goes. Like we're trying to make something that's a little bit outside standard use,
Yeah.
and not taking the
One
overhead
of the, it's
along
one
for
of
the
the
ride.
advantages of being this small and having so few investors.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have it any other way. And maybe I'm going to end up writing a runtime 2D rigging animation ragdoll system for it, and
Yeah.
that's
And
that's fine. I want to do that.
I was gonna say
I want to make sure that
that's not a
I want to
bad
make sure I
statement.
have to before I start.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of where I'm at still with Deeps.
Yeah, it needs that R&D, but like and there's I've run into plenty of cases where just the overhead, like physics systems, not unlike rendering systems, are like optimized for very specific types of things over and over again. And a
Yeah.
lot of times when you import what they've got, if you're not doing that, it's not optimized for that, and you're doing it in a different way, and you run into perf stuff, and then you have to change stuff to your own
Yeah.
things anyway. I mean, we're talking about a game that's going to have a crap ton of stuff floating around on screen.
Yep. Every single thing that a feature promises you is a requirement that someone had to make sacrifices to make it happen.
Yes, just like the sacrifices we make, just every single day of like, do we do a feature like this or that? They had to do the same thing.
Yep.
I ain't worried. It's also like if you're gonna have a time in your life where you get to write stuff from scratch, is not a bad time to do it.
You think I'm at the right time, the right point in my life?
I think you're at the right company to be able to do that. Like
Too.
some of what we do is because we get to do it now, and like
Yep.
no one can say no, and yeah, we may end up eating it for that, but like
We're here being diligent and saying no when we think we need to, which is what's important.
yeah, agreed. Unity is a generic solution that, in trying to be everything to everyone, ends up being not enough for anyone just outside the small box. Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
Unreal Engine was
all
for
the
years
big
whatever
big
Fortnite.
engines fall into this trap, right? Like
Yeah, and I want to be fair. Like, it's only a trap if you're doing stuff outside of what is very doable there. It's just that you tend to not get something novel out of it. Like, if I had a really good story for a shooter, and I wasn't concerned about extremely novel mechanics around it, like going into Unreal or at this point even Unity and just using this stuff out the box would 100% be the smart thing to do. If I was like, oh, but the bullets do this other thing you're not used to, then it starts getting squirrely. Well, like, if you wanted to make Super Mario Brothers in Unity, like you could absolutely use their tile system, use all their collision for it. If you wanted to make, a top-down scroller shooter, absolutely, 100%. But as soon as as soon as you want to get out of that box, it can get a little weird.
Yeah,
Or
I
you
think
have
it's
to have
like a
worked
lot
with
of
it so much.
a lot of it is like, you know, for the longest time, there were no such utilities and resources and libraries available to game developers. You had to make it all yourself, and you realize, like, oh my god, I have to have all of these specialized tools to make the content I need to make my game. And then people go, well, what if I sell these tools? I'll just kind of subtract the game from it, and maybe that works. And that works for, I mean, it worked for Unreal, I guess. But
I mean, it
you look
works
at
for,
some awkward tools, like
but it works. Like I
tools
just want to be.
plus game
It works.
minus the game can be very weird.
It can, but I just want to be like super fair. We are using Unity, and like it is putting us like leagues ahead of where we would have been in some spots, and then
Yeah,
in other spots, it's like you.
Unity is still my engine of choice, and part of it is because that component model, that design idea that set it apart oh so long ago when we first picked it up, is that it does lend itself well to whatever you want to imagine. You have
Mhm.
game objects with behaviors on them, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it just doesn't lend itself to a very like before this UI model that we're using was out. Like the previous thing is you had a weird scene with all these objects floating around in it somewhere that a camera could capture, and like in a lot of cases you were by hand moving stuff around, which is like equally just wacky. um you just got to be judicious with what you use and what you home cook. But like people, I don't know, when I went to school back in my day, like
Here we go.
you just had to, you just did everything because there wasn't a Unity out there.
Yeah,
Unreal Engine wasn't something that was like broad, it wasn't taught. um, you know, you learned physics, and it's not that crazy. Like making things collide is not that nuts. There are absolutely like pitfalls to doing it and proper methods, but like a rendering engine, not that crazy hard. Like there's a list of function calls you got to do to talk to that video card. But do you want to do that every time? Do you want to keep up? Like rendering kind of brutal.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, rendering is a great example of something that we don't need to do differently than other games, right?
Nope.
Like, so thank God that I don't have to learn how to speak graphics card right now
Yeah,
to get
and
to move things forward.
like
Yeah,
we picked up a solution for, sprite shaders, and it saved us a bunch of time. It was one of those cases where like, and we talked directly about this. Like, does it make sense to dive deep on shaders right now, or at least for Cruft, put that argument behind us, get something out of the box, and use it.
yeah,
They're tough calls, but they're not that tough. Um, and so, like, to sort of circle back around, like, I don't think spending a ton of time on sprite shaders makes sense for Cruft because it's not central to that game. But having absolute knowledge and updatability and growth in how things are animated and deep seems to me like that's worth spending some time on.
yep, yeah, totally agree.
Have anything else on the docket?
Well, we haven't really spent much time with the nitty gritty details of all of these Cruft tasks.
Mm.
Um,
You are not
we
particularly centered on the screen.
I'm not particularly centered.
Is that me thing or you thing? No, call's good. I think. Yep.
I see me on the stream mostly centered.
You are your window that you're looking at isn't. Curious.
is in full screen. It is a full screen window. Is this better?
Yeah, you're sort of cut off on the side.
In
the call.
I could do this. I'll just wait till the stream.
Did you change screens?
No.
Huh.
Nope.
Weird. All right. I also my little me in the corner over my blank green square doesn't fit the same as it used to. I wonder if it just changed the call focus somehow.
Yeah.
Draw things with the turtle, Z. Badger. I remember. What was it? Logo? Is that the language? Yeah.
This is an inside joke I'm not privy to.
Yeah.
Was this a logo drawing tool?
No. There was a language called Logo that you had a little pointer thing, and you put code into it, and it was essentially like an Etch-a-Sketch, where the turtle would draw a line behind it, and he just brought me back, Badger, and you could draw stuff on screen. It was like a spirograph, depending on how you mathed it up.
Right.
And
sort of like a function-driven paintbrush or pencil.
Yeah, so like if you didn't have a mouse and it was all function-driven, it was a very interesting language to learn. So it taught you a lot about. It was designed in 1967. It taught you a lot about screen space and and procedural type things going on. Where once you got it, it taught you about for loopy type stuff. Where you can imagine if I come up with a short snippet of code that draws a line up at a 60-degree angle back down so it's at the same point, and then rotates this turtle like another 20 degrees, and then I for loop that a bunch, you get this like spiral thing around, spirograph kind of dealy. It's very cool stuff. It's actually I think it's actually the first programming language I ever interacted with.
Nice.
Yeah, and it was released on Apple, and Apple way back in the day had a lot of computers going out to schools. That's where I started. So
my first machine was also an Apple.
Yeah, good callback. Go X forward, yeah, turn degrees, pick new draw tool, angle, go forward again, put down draw tool. Yep, it was wild, man. Should make a game in Logo. Maybe not.
We could make Logo. We could make Logo in our game, but I wouldn't want to make a game in Logo. Okay, so we're almost at the end of our planned programming. We're
up to 98 lifetime copies.
All close.
Another 2 copies last hour.
We could get more detailed on this list of tasks. We could talk about maybe at which point we put a big push behind the aggregate change we've made, sort of crafting a bit of a milestone thing. We'll do releases along the way, but
I need you to repeat that. I didn't understand what you meant.
So we could start trying to think about what collection of features fits in the next phase. What's in the next big push before we, put another quarter in the marketing machine, so to speak, and all that.
I think if I look at this, I mean, the tooltip stuff, I think no matter what, not because it's dangerous, but because it leads places, is going to have some amount of fallout. So that's I imagine tooltips are this week plus some additional stuff.
Yep.
The denouement and everything that's P1 in this list is probably another week. If I had
And
to,
we don't have any. We don't have any persistent yard on this list.
We don't?
I don't think.
so I think what we're probably wrapping up is the tool stuff and the current P0s and 1 on this list over the next couple weeks, with a release this week and a release next week. And then I think we start diving.
Tooltips in the zeros and ones, and then boom,
And then boom.
release it. Okay.
Yeah, and I think, I think we're releasing each week. I just think this is the larger body of work. And then persistent yard is probably what we drop into thereafter.
Okay. Ignore these up here. These are done. All right. So tooltip stuff. I'm not gonna get. I don't even. These task names don't even reflect anything. Just this chunk of purple is what I'm going to end up doing. I'm gonna take, what is it? This? Nope, this. I turn this into those tasks are going to become this basically. Oh hey, I think we've got an ad going.
Oh, I think you're right.
I just saw delicious cheese on my side monitor.
Is I don't see that thing if I've got other windows open. It's such a terrible indicator.
Yeah, ads better says.
I had the chat popped out at one point and it was helpful. What I probably need to do is pop out chat, put it over here. So then I won't look back in that direction, but it's all good.
These are all. I mean, these all do feel good. I don't mind any of these P0s or ones being in the next batch.
Yeah, like the things.
I mean, I don't mind any work being in the next batch, but this stuff does feel good. Like
we meant to do it, and then we were.
Denouement got a big bump.
Yep.
Oh, you know what I keep hearing is how do I complete a Chivo?
Yeah.
Do we want to lengthen the tutorial to talk about Chivos, or do we want to punt on that until we have more narrative hooks that we can talk to you things?
I would like to find out what text is actually present when I go to the Chivo screen and update.
What text is present?
Yeah. Chivo's got a big old icon there up in the corner. We have about 20 seconds left on the ad.
I've also got I want to get into what Badger's saying, but let's talk this first. I see our faces on the
Yeah, we're back.
Two.
Sweet. Good, good, good.
While I'm firing up the game, Badger, do you want to tell me more about making sure you can deposit the van every time you arrive without crashing the game? Do you crash the game a lot with your van? Do you crash your van?
Or are you just being extremely judicious with what step one is? Yeah, your screen is totally cut off, man.
Yeah, I don't know. My there's more of my camera
Yeah.
in the mix. Thinking of a future issue based on our previous issue. Yikes. Okay, what is the text when you enter the Chivo app? This is what you see. Yeah, that's wildly cut off on this.
What is next to the Chivo icon?
Nothing.
Yeah, the Chivo icon should be
This?
left. And
Like
next
this
to it,
space here.
yep. And to the right of it, it should, pardon my French,
Should say some stuff.
fucking explain how Chivos work.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then once we get some narrative stuff in, we'll obviously bolster all this mumbo jumbo. But that it seems
That
like
seems like a straightforward way to solve this problem.
Yep.
And in a way that fits in this chunk.
Yep.
What is this chunk in aggregate right now? Okay. Yeah, before we tutorialize any of this WASD stuff, I think this is a P0, don't you?
Yeah.
Add helpful text to Chivo app that explains how to Chivo. Oops. Don't do that. Do that. Very short. P0. I was trying to dislodge the van when the yard was full. The yard is persistent. It will fill up over time. We auto drop things on the new screen. If the 30 by 30 is full and you're bringing 30 more squares to it, how's it going to deal with overload? That is a good question. Especially because we have forbidden overflow from reaching into the van
Mm-hmm.
in recent times.
It's a very good question.
Yeah. We have thought about this a bit, but we haven't had to actually implement anything. Just the general, I have more stuff coming to me than I have space for.
And in this specific case, it is special because I'm going somewhere with a loaded van and there's no guarantee that there's 30 things there already.
Yeah.
Like there isn't an interaction I have to do. I mean, unless we just don't unload your van there. That would be the thing to do. But then we'd have to tutorialize the fact that, like, you got crap in your van.
Yeah, I think what needs to happen. There we go. Sorry, I'm spacing out thinking about this problem. I think what needs to happen is, I'm going to represent this very
We need an escrow system.
generically. We an escrow system. No, I do think we just need to put it in your van. Maybe this is going to be the dumbest diagram ever.
I love that it's already labeled spaghetti.
Well, Yeah, so like the location system initializes itself, and then it checks uh, checks the level layout and populates the scene, populates the yard. I mean, and then does it check the van?
I mean, I think we just make it so that the van does not empty itself when you're home.
Yeah.
And that's it.
So, yeah, if the van actually had, that's what it'll look like to the player.
Yeah.
I agree. This will be the case where what makes sense is way more useful than trying to explain what's actually going to happen.
Going to store the objects in escrow.
Well, no, we have to bypass the thing that puts
Yeah.
that forbids overflow from going into the van. We have to put the items in the van directly. Yeah. So what are we
living
going
in
to
a
get?
van down by
We're
the river?
actually going to have a location state file. So we'll have to do some. This will have to be refactored a little bit too, because right now there's no way to there's no point where we try to unload the van if you have an existing location. So we'll already kind of be in some special location logic at this point, and so I'm less concerned about how this is going to flow out.
The amount of special sauce on the plate relative to the spaghetti, very sauced. Badger. Will be a parking spot down by the river. That sounds like a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Be out rolling doobies when you're living in a van down by the river. Yeah, I think that has to happen.
So we create the level layout, we populate the yard from the save file. And then yeah. Yep. Is there enough room for van items? Yes. These are the most fun types of charts. The ones with yeses and nos. Is there enough room for the van items? Yes. Add them. No. Add them to the van. The items are not actually in a location at this point in the flow. It's just sort of my pedantic comment I was making earlier. So I'll have to put them in the van, and it'll be its own. This will just be its own logic that we add onto it. Fun. Hey, look.
Putting them into the van might be. Well, no, you just start from the largest one, right? That's how that would work. Is it a challenge to get them into the van?
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit of a bin packing problem.
Do we technically? We don't technically run in. Maybe we do. Do we run into that now when you're trying to dump a bunch of stuff in your yard? I presume it just like it's not.
We don't. Yeah. What the F do I do? I forget. It's been a long time since I've looked at that.
Yeah.
I think that is the placement strategy code. We could. Apparently, at the time, I thought that we might need different different sets of logic for placing objects at locations. So I made it a little bit more generic, and you can kind of pick the strategy you want and pass it around. We only have one strategy right now. What is it called? Breadth first placement strategy. Yeah. So we're just kind of recursively searching from a origin point for a open location that'll fit the object.
Yep.
And
Which
it's
going to have to be more robust for that than, excuse me, unless you save not just the item list, but the position in the van, which probably just solves the whole problem. But
yeah, saving the position in the van means that the player gets to solve the bin packing problem for me.
But it is something to consider. I don't think we want to go back and revisit it today, but with large objects in yards and spitting out large outputs and stuff like that, there's an exceedingly high likelihood that when you get close-ish to your capacity, it'll balk on spitting everything out, not because you don't have enough space for it, but because of orientation of things.
Yeah, you technically have the space, but nothing fits because you didn't
you
align things.
Nope, you have the space and everything fits, and it still can't do it. Because the first thing it places then negates something else being able to be placed. Like you run into this all the time with
that's what I mean.
With the van. So you have the tiles, there isn't an orientation that works and it just doesn't find it. But I like the fact that it just flat out says, it ain't gonna fit, I'll make room. It's just that doesn't fly when we have to physically take repack your van.
Yeah. The other thing, I'm glad that we're kind of unpacking this a little bit deeper. We want to do this before the update with persistent yards.
Oh yeah. This is part of persistent yards. This is step 1. Persistent.
Well, what I mean is that it has to happen before persistent yards players have to have save files where their van items have positions before we roll out the persistent yard, I think.
Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is that Badger called this step 1.
Fair enough.
Step 1, make sure you can deposit the van every time you arrive without crashing the game.
Yeah. Yep.
Producer
Badger. Full circle now. Solid.
Yeah. I think Steam's store data only updates hourly. I think. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
It's giving me the 3 o'clock data. In the 3 o'clock hour, we sold 0 copies. But we're up to 9 today. That's pretty sweet.
9's a good number.
9 is a good number. For a lazy Monday, still only 6 lifetime units returned. Does what's on the box. I may not be fluent with code, but I do understand the basic premise of problem solving. Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
I'm going to abandon you for a quick second, and then I'll be back.
Sweet.
Excuse me.
Do have abandonment issues. I'm so tired. I realized this morning when I woke up that ever since the power went out on, maybe it was Thursday of last week, maybe it was, there's a bunch of stuff in my house that I just didn't turn back on. A couple of which are like bug catcher things that are sort of important. It's a big house out in the middle of nowhere. So I've restarted those. The other one is the air filter that sits right next to my bed, which is an essential part of my survival strategy. It involves while I'm asleep having the air be relatively clean because I'm allergic to cat dander. Got 3 cats, big cat person. Uh, household mold and dust mites. It's an old house, which we keep relatively clean, but still, like, is what it is. And for days, I have not slept well. And then I pushed the button on so that my air would be filtered again. Entropy exists, indeed. But yeah, the power going out was a real wake up call. Other thing I need to do is go on Amazon and find small window AC. I'm tempted to get one of these mini split things for it, but I think I'll do that upstairs. To 150 square feet? That is not enough air conditioning. 5,000 BTUs. 150 square feet. 15 by 10, that's not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. Maybe it does cut it. It doesn't have to be that cool in the room.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm back.
Let's see. Average customer review.
It's kind of fun. I can match the game screen accurately in this context.
8,000 BTUs. That sounds about right. $200.
What are we talking about?
I need an AC. The ban. $10,000 BTU with built-in dehumidifier. Top reviewed for ease of installation. You don't even install it. BTUs plus heat. Exhaustos, thingamadoozle, remote control. I feel like you haven't been reviewed.
Oh, you need so much to get a tree going at the start. Some of this.
It's a little cramped in here.
Yeah.
I almost met the first pass on this. It was actually 5 tiles shorter. Mega cramped. Got a lot of big items, big ticket items.
To generate some craft. Yeah, I probably don't need this earthen oven. I can't remember what I was thinking when I packed it up.
What's it sell for? Probably garbage.
14?
Yeah, it's not worth it.
Doesn't feel like worth it.
Per tile value.
I don't need 9 tiles that badly.
My heart going to be broken with another semi-portable AC unit. That is the question.
I think you should stop falling in love with AC units.
I do love the one that's in this window. It's like interesting in that it doesn't sit in ka-chunk into the whole window. It there's a section of it that's outside the window, a section of it that's inside the window, and like a thin connection, so the window can actually stay down pretty far. So it's kind of neat. Like it overhangs on the inside,
Mm-hmm.
but it rips. The only thing is, it has a water output on the inside of the house. You just like I gotta have it. I have it dripping into like a Kool-Aid pitcher.
Yeah, that sounds awkward.
Yeah, I mean, it's an office. There's a bathroom right across the hall. I just dumped the pitcher out in the tub. It is pretty impressive seeing on humid days just how much water it pulls out of the air. Badger, we will see you sometime soon. Do your thing.
All right. The pine tree industry can begin.
Are you pining? Opining?
Yep. So much wheat.
It's a special little pushback that, like, sometimes it's not the cruft that gets you.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, wheat is definitely one of those ones that it's like the yellow cruft.
Could get a mini. Do I get a mini split? I don't want to commit to that. If I need it later,
Those,
I'll know.
those are for real though, that's for sure.
Yeah, they make like pretty economy versions of them. They're like super efficient, is the thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I know someone who's very into like sustainable engineering and efficiency kind of stuff like that. And they went with a mini split.
Yep. I mean, they are nice. You just need space outside to put the dongle.
I'll buy one of these for cheap. Yeah, it's cheap enough.
Of course, the old Frigidaire 5000 BTU window mounted air conditioner, 169 bucks. I feel like 6,000 is where I need to be. 6,000. 30. 50. 250 square feet.
My pizza zone here.
A lot. But 169 bucks is 169 bucks. Like that's super hard to argue with. If I need to buy a second one, that feels pretty bad.
That is a truism.
It's not just the ratings, it's what they say. Yeah, 1 star. Work for one day. That sounds great. Bad packaging product. Keep your money. I'm confused with AC is good ratings unless you're trying to cool down a closet. Woof. At the end of the day, the window AC may just be like the way to go.
Another piece of feedback about the game I've received recently is like, you know, people talking about making pizza, which makes sense, and also people talking about composting, just how they enjoy the composting or
The
perceive the composting to be OP.
It's interesting because like it is very powerful. I don't know that it's OP. But like if I shave it by like one cruft, like it'll start feeling different. It's because I've tweaked it a lot of times, and it's like
Mhm.
it is now with the balance of the regular game, like at this like interesting tipping point where it's absolutely useful, but the time it takes to compost, that's the other value is like if I make it take a little bit longer, it's really on that bubble,
Yep.
which is
Yeah.
good.
And I don't know that these are, I don't hear these things as calls to change
No.
composting. I do hear them as calls to look at creating other ways to dispose cruft
Mhm.
that are also interesting.
Yep. I agree with that.
Because, like, yeah, my game is generally going to include composting pretty much every time.
I do wonder if part of the efficiency of composting is that the composter itself is only one tile. Like if it was 2 by 2 and you're like, I'm gonna run 3 composters, like you're taking up a lot more space. But like
Yeah.
I don't think composting right now needs to change at all. Just as like a premise for this conversation. But like
No.
it's interesting to me like unless you buy it exactly the wrong time, a trash voucher is like 15 cash money, which is nothing. But
Sure.
it does require, it's not very granular. Like you either have 75 or a bunch more than that, or a huge bunch more than that. And so it's not like a continuous thing you do. It's a like, let me wipe this big board. Like the trash bin is useless to you right now because you don't fill the trash bin over time.
Yeah.
Whereas the composter is this like cycle of life kind of thing where it's got a timer on it. And just as it's starting to get a little cramped, I'm like, oh, that's right. I got some poop. I got some cruft. Let me fire it up. But I think like its tempo is very satisfying. In the same
Yeah.
way that the well is very satisfying when it's incremental. Like, it's like, oh, I just got to remember, got to go check the well. You're good to go. I am pushing mad, unheard of amounts of coffee through my system at this point.
Is that
I'm very hydrated. I drank a ton of water earlier today. I'll be right back.
is that foreshadowing for another abandonment?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
We got an ad in 4 minutes. I'll just run it.
All right.
I'll leave the camera going.
Cool. Really use more space right now. But I'm pretty close to a third deed. Oh, that's actually not even more efficient. That's just okay. Just making that space now. Make my logging zone up here. I actually like having a little bit of a variety of animals. Just gives me more to do, more ways to make poop. Seems good.
You are locked in.
In what in what way?
It's just like the intensity of your gaze.
Yeah, see, that's the corrupt effect.
I love it.
I'm still thinking a little bit about like what other ways to solve the puzzle of cruft should there be? Like selling it in the van.
I've thought of
Feeding it into a pig and composting. I kind of feel like are
cycle of life
the same. Yeah, they're the same solution.
They are.
And then there's the bin, obviously.
There's the bin. I've considered some sort of dumpster that gives you a temporary large space to just put stuff in general. So like basically just allowing you to take X amount of space in your yard and turn it into that much more space, which is a different sort of solution in that you're just putting it off.
Yeah, I was going to say it's not a solution as it is procrastination.
Well, the procrastination it is a solution. It's the like, why do you get rid of cruft at all? It's because you're going to run out of space. But if I could turn a 3 tall by 5 wide thing into something that rather than holding 15 in it holds 60 in it, I mean, I'm sure people put cruft on shelves.
Yeah, no, I think someone sent us a shot of them just loading cruft into their van.
That was Christian.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Which I thought was a very awesome flex. It's like, guess what I'm taking? He sent me a text also. He's like, I'm taking this all to my next yard. It's the new meta.
Yeah, no, he's like making
a statement.
He's making a statement. That's exactly what I think.
Shows up with his own garbage, as many of us do when we move.
Right.
Half of what we move is garbage.
He's thinking deeply about what it means to cruft. That's for sure.
There have been a couple, sort of like, hey, it would be cool if there was like a roll the dice type way of getting rid of cruft. So like there's been like the idea of a Cruft-O-Matic or cruft compactor for quite some time, and like maybe what it does is it takes in 10 cruft or 20 cruft and has a chance to spit out either 5, 10, or 25 cruft when it finishes. That might be interesting. It's a fun roll of the dice. I mean, the neat thing is with stuff that has a long timer on it is that you get this sort of like, not reverse, but like end of the loop thing. Like the trash bin, what you're really doing is filling it up and then being unable to use it to fill up again until you have enough to fill it. Like you only clear cruft out of your yard all at once, and so like a Cruft-O-Matic, if it's slow, then it gives you this interesting way of sort of putting cruft in a dumpster for a while and then finding out what the result is later. Your limitation is if there's not enough room for stuff to fit afterwards, then you can't use it again. If it has a short timer, then you're rolling the dice a lot. And you're really just trying to like beat the house on cruft. But originally, like I even thought about having the campfire be able to like have a cruft destroying, like 3 cruft in, 1 cruft out. Just burn your trash.
Oh yeah, yep, burning trash.
I think
burning trash is a special. It's a special thing. It's a special thing to choose to do. A family member whose name I will not out on the internet, but the fire department showed up to their house for burning a inflatable Zodiac boat. It's like a roast. It's like a rowboat-sized
Yeah.
Boat.
I'm sure that let out a
best way
bunch
to
of smoke.
dispose of it was to light it on fire. It's so I always think of that when people talk about burning trash.
It's interesting because for me, it was the kind of thing growing up that people still more commonly did, even in like the suburbs of Connecticut, but was being curbed. Like that's kind of like
Yeah.
the era I grew up in. Whereas like in rural places, like you can get a permit and burn trash. A lot of times it's like regulated somewhat in terms of what you can burn or what you can't. It's dependent on municipalities, so it's like it's not that crazy, but it is definitely nowadays just like people burning trash in their backyard. What? But
Yeah. Yep.
you know,
Well, yeah, like working farm work. There's burning season where you get to burn all the brush. You just call the fire department right before, you know, the day of, and make sure the wind isn't too dangerous. And
yep.
that was one of my favorite seasons to work.
Yep. Sometimes you get an inspection.
Fire to work.
Yeah, light stuff up. But yeah, I think some sort of compacting machine would be interesting. I think before I go any further, like I may make a bigger composter that works at larger bulk. Like the game still is relatively low scale. There's nothing like massive that you're building that really blows things out. I mean, there's recipes floating around, in the background that are for like, hey, what if I was raising like a crap ton of pigs? What if I was growing multiple trees at a time, like setting up, an orchard? I feel like that level of scale doesn't exist yet, and that is when the conventional means for like composting would be like, all right, now I'm in a cycle where I'm doing like 10 clicks on composters and they're just not coming up quick enough. I feel like the advent of big business is when I'd probably move forward and come up with a couple different methods, like a cruft compactor like machine, like having that run on electricity or some form of fuel would be like interesting, or an incinerator that like is like, hey, 8 logs of pine and 50 cruft, and it outputs some variable smaller amount of cruft. Like, all right, that's like the first step, but I feel like it would be really neat if there was like sort of a fairly clear line to like a step up, like be it electricity or something like that, where like I'm building small factory type stuff, and that would be like the next big step beyond the trash bin and composting.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I wasn't really thinking about like, yeah, because like crufting is the first really important crufting. Composting is kind of the first really important skill you learn to manage cruft as you're encountering different scales of production in the game. But we don't really go that big. Like the biggest you get right now is probably the millstone.
Yep. The large fields, or excuse me, the small field, which is not a plot, it's a field, but it's a small one. Like that one churns out, especially if you get that and the millstone going. But the stalls right now, like they're the biggest thing in the game, but they're very much like intended to be sort of mid-grade.
Yeah, I was gonna call out the stalls.
And I've added, even more bulky recipes to them like in the last week or so, but they're not like, I'm not pushing the limit with them. And there may come a point where if we don't need huge things floating around, that like those get kicked up a notch even more. But I feel like there is space for something big like a barn, and it's got recipes for pigs where you're just like, you're running like a breeding session. It's getting like mad ruddy in that barn, and it takes a while, but like it's super efficient. You spit out tons of cows, and then an abattoir, which is just like a butchering haven where you're like, yeah, let me eat up 10 cows and just make like absolutely egregious amount of ground beef.
Hmm.
And then what you'd want to do is build up to the point where you had supply chains at that scale. And so you're optimizing for like click and resource efficiency. And so, I'm raising cows 10 at a time, but I'm butchering them 10 at a time and getting
Yeah.
that much further output for them. Like if I was breeding cows, instead of like 2 cows gives me a chance of like, I get 1 cow and a chance of an extra one or an extra two, it'd be like, I put 10 cows into this thing and I'm going to get 10 babies out and I have a percent chance to get an extra 10 and another percent chance to get another extra 10 after that, where it's just like, you need the space, but for the resources, like you can really perpetuate with it. But then I need, like, unless I want to have 6 butcher stalls, like I really need the big one that gobbles them all up and even more efficiently churns out ground beef. But at that point, I need like a hamburger making factory machine. Otherwise, I'm like sitting there on the stove, like in my backyard, when
Yeah.
I've got
Yeah. It seems like
like the
once the time it takes to click on the stuff to get one step done, like it outpaces the timer on the other bits in the chain, is when people might start asking questions like,
yeah.
is there a bigger way
And
to
then
go?
things that big should be spitting out a ton of cruft, at which point you're like, oh, like I am using like 3 trash bins and I'm using them on full. And like, oh, do I really need an incinerator or do I need some sort of like, you know, electricity powered compacting machine? The next big step. But yeah, I mean, the game is still very much smaller in terms of overall scale of what you're doing than originally envisioned. It just had a lot more to do at this scale than I anticipated.
Oh, and it definitely doesn't feel like this stuff should have been in already. I don't want to give that impression. Like
Yeah, no.
this all feels personal. This all is like personal level stuff. The the thing we're talking about is like a wild uh, growth arc for the main character of the game, Q.
Yeah, like I've always
Like,
envisioned there being like there's Big Biz Bill who like buys stuff in bulk. Great alliteration on that. But like having like, you know, Beth Bezos who like wants to buy, you know, 500 pine logs because he's gonna be printing a bunch of books out. Like, like is that interesting? And I'm not 100% sure that it is at this point. Like the game's character is about like bootstrapping and moving on, but like that might be something that for your own personal yard is like, oh, here's the place for it. Like here's where like I'm building this big thing, and I'm dealing with Chivos on a grand scale. Dealing directly with Beth Bezos.
yep. Or
Or an MMO market.
or opting out of that.
Yeah, or
Nope.
opting out of that. We had different ideas there, but like if we were gonna do something that was cross-player, we'd probably just do it out of your yard. It wouldn't be a perpetual like I'm in random yard X doing things. You'd be like, this is my space. This is what I make. I'll put this stuff on the auction house. If we ever got to that point, I don't know that we ever will. Maybe Cruft 2 Electric Boogaloo, but a yard does seem like a persistent yard seems like the place to attach that.
This is a wild out of the blue question. Do you feel like the background darkens enough when you level up? Because it does not darken the same amount as it does here. Pretty sure of that.
I don't know. I think the level up treatment needs an update no matter what. I think I wanted stuff to be like crazy gold for a while. I think, and the reason I bring that up isn't to just like pork barrel politics something I want in is that like what happens up front, everything is very much the same contrast when you level up, and it would sort of darken the back if there was a lot of chaos, shiny chaos going on in front. I don't think that leveling up is modal enough. I find myself going like, "Oh, that's right, I gotta click this button that popped up in the
I
middle,
was
the middle
I
of the
was just
screen."
having that experience,
Yeah,
which is why I asked that question, because I was trying to click on the sawhorse in the top right, and I had lost track entirely that the pop up was in the middle, waiting for me to hit the thing.
like it needs like a gold. It needs its own treatment. It should be a gold shiny. I've got a golden ticket. You
I
know.
know sadly it's like really easy to ask for and design these like fantastic sequences, but those are like a relatively heavy lift UI work wise.
Yeah.
So I end up putting them off a lot.
I mean, I I'm not sure that you putting them off as a character. You and I both prioritize everything, and I think things end up 99% of the time in the right place.
Yeah, it's not one of the things I go out of my way to like randomly do. It's part of something else though, which I don't
Uh,
have to always be the case.
yeah, that's a little more personal.
All right, I'll make a note. Something about the level up is not modal enough.
Yep.
That's the note.
Is the UI pop up like a prefab?
Yeah.
I wonder if I could just take that, put the material shader on it, and make it shinier. Give it some sort of halo.
Oh, I didn't give myself any controls in here that I can use at runtime. What can I do? Well, I guess I can just show you where it is. So the UI pop-up, the level up pop-up is
What is it called?
that's message pop-up, maybe? Yeah, there we go. I think it's just this. It's called message pop-up visual tree.
But then at that point, every pop up would have the thing on it. Whatever I do.
Duplicate it and call it message pop-up Blingo visual tree, and then add the shader on it.
True.
And then
Is that okay with you?
yeah. Yeah, this thing is pretty light in terms of structure. Yeah, do that, make it look the way you want, and then if I need to like combine them and make it a toggleable thing, like that's fine.
Well, so visual tree doesn't give me any hooks to put crazy materials on, though.
That's right.
Right. That's why I was asking if there's a prefab somewhere, like an actual thing to hook stuff on.
No,
All right.
it's UI stuff. Yeah, doesn't it suck that half your game is made in some program called UI Builder, and then the other half of the game is made in the rest of the software?
Yep.
Kind of sucks.
Will, we are up against the clock at this point. Close
Done it.
down to Yes, we've successfully streamed yet again. I'm going to do one last second check to see. Doesn't look like it. We are at 98 copies sold. Oh my God, we're so close. So close to breaking 100. Amazing. Anyhow, we will be
Yep.
back Thursday. You're going to mention off stream something about the 11th?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, fill me in. But yeah, we're doing good. Had a good solid weekend. Had a good update on Friday. Thanks, Will, for putting the extra time in while you're packing your car. And
I actually did the work the night before, and then that morning I was like, all right, does this actually still work?
did you make
And
the make the very clear decision the next day of like, I think so. So, folks, we will see you in a few days. Tell all your friends about Craft and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Have a good night.